everyone have the agenda link? All right. So do we have any announcements or highlights since the last meeting? Right now there's an empty space here for that.
Yeah, I would just announce welcome to Artemis Tosini. Some of you may know Artemis from when she did the work to bring Osquery to Linux ARM64. This was a year or two ago. Maybe other folks remember better exactly when that was. But
should have probably been like 2 years ago.
2 years, nice. So Artemis has just joined the team at Fleet to be on our agent team and work mostly on Osquery, but also on Orbit and Fleet Desktop and some of the other agent stuff. And as we've seen, she was able to get it done with that ARM64 port, and looking forward to seeing what else you do here, Artemis. Anything you'd like to say about yourself?
Not sure. A bit distracted today. I have a PR that I just made, and is a bit weird right now because of GitHub Actions. Okay.
Yeah, I'm really happy that you joined us. Working with Zach is going to be really cool, and thanks for helping us, and thanks for all your future contributions.
Mm-hmm.
And Artemis, just to be clear, this is the Osquery community meeting with
Okay, yeah, that makes
the technical steering committee. So we've got folks from Alessandro, Mike, Stefano are from Trail of Bits. Oh, and Joe, right? Daniel is from, remind me the name of your company, Daniel.
From Devo.
Say it again.
Devo?
Oh, Devo, right. DEVO, like band.
Yes, like the band.
Kelvin's from Fleet, and Joseph, who we often call Seth, is from Collide.
Cool.
The AR64 Linux support.
Yep. That was actually something I did because I got nerd sniped.
Well, yeah, that produces the best work I've seen. So,
yeah.
Seth, you joined a minute late, but I almost had to do MC. If you would like to retain the authority, I'll cede it back to you. Otherwise,
I'll take over, sure. But welcome, okay. Especially welcome, Artemis. So nice to have you back in the Osquery fold. Next, I assume no one has any other announcements? If not, moving on to the next section, which is sort of an unstructured place for questions, issues, PRs, anything people want to bring up that they feel may not merit a full agenda. If not, onward to agenda items. Osquery 5.5. So we talked about trying to cut releases about on the 1st of the month. It's about on the 1st of the month, and we haven't cut a release, so maybe we should. But let's figure out where a couple of PRs are landing.
Yeah, I pulled a handful that we could make a release story out of. We can go through those individually.
Let's go through them individually. It's probably reasonable.
Okay. Well, the unified logging PR has been in the works for a long time, and I feel like all of the feedback was addressed, but correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think so. My last comment there was that I thought it was mergeable, and I didn't know if Stefano or Alessandro wanted to give it a once-over, or if we should just omit and merge it. And then the other thing I didn't know is if Daniel wanted to share credit with the previous authors as, like, the GitHub co-authored by or not. I don't have strong feelings, but I wanted to toss that out.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's okay for me.
So you don't need to give me or Garrett any credit. If you did
toss
reuse
it at Puffy and Garrett.
Yeah,
Daniel.
well, yeah. neither me or Garrett minds, I'm sure.
I
If
don't think
you-
anyone minds, but it's all a
Yeah.
game.
Okay. Well, feel free to add that then.
But otherwise, I don't know if Stefano or Alessandro wants to look over it, or if we're happy enough and we should just go.
Sorry, I just keep crashing here. So I missed a couple of items.
We were
Is it
discussing
about?
unified logging PR.
Oh yeah, what's the state of it? I remember that we had a problem where it was too easy to select start everything and put Osquery in a bad place. Did we end up changing how it worked?
It's still possible. I know Daniel did some things, but I also am not sure that we need to be perfect here. Like, there's lots of things you can do where you shoot yourself in the foot. So
What's the
Yeah,
biggest concern at this point?
I don't think there's one. I think we could merge it.
Well, that sounds sweet.
It's got foot guns, but so does everything.
Yeah, it seems like it's a big feature gap we should solve. Maybe we can merge it and open additional issues if required.
Okay, I'll thumb it later on today. Then we can merge that. I just wanted to give Stefano and Alessandro a chance to weigh in. Authorized keys parsing. I think that's probably okay. I don't know if anyone else wants to review that code or if we should just merge it.
Has it been reviewed by someone? If
I-
so,
I
it's
re-
good
I
to
reviewed
merge,
it.
my opinion.
It got some changes today, but I can re-review it. I'm just not a deep C person, so I'm always a little bit hesitant.
I think I reviewed it in the past.
Okay.
If you see my comment there.
So those two sound pretty straightforward.
I'm just looking over it now. There are a few SSH key types you might find in the wild now that are not listed.
You want to flag
Like-
them right there?
Yeah. Let's see. What's it called?
Yeah, and that's great feedback, and I would advocate for if whatever someone's done. I'm not familiar with the PR, so I'd advocate for whatever someone's done. If it's an improvement, let's merge it, and then if there is other stuff that Artemis knows that should be done, let's document that in a new issue and get to that.
I mean, if they're key types, that's an easy iteration on this PR. If they're deeper issues, maybe decide if the code is fundamentally good or fundamentally bad, and then
Yeah. The only other thing I could think of is I'm not sure how this would deal with if you have a certificate authority and authorized keys, but those are not very common, and I suspect it would already just work under key, like I like the key options. Though I haven't been able to test that yet. I'm still getting my dev set up because I just joined yesterday.
is status quo any better?
No.
Great.
So yeah, just let's see, where was that?
I'm not to anything you want to say. Probably best just to say it in the PR. On the
Yeah.
PR.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Next two things you called out here, Mike.
Okay. There was a change from us, from Trailbits, to do some additional CPU utilization columns to the processes table. And I think this just needs review. And if people don't feel qualified to do the C++ aspect of it, please review it in terms of your feedback.
How do
this
people-
ought to work, should work, how you like it, whatever.
How do people feel about this? So this is actually an interesting one to talk about because this is, in a way, very new functionality. It's similar to the Windows group caching that Stefano built, but we are building a cache that sort of tracks information over time. If you're talking, Zach, you're muted.
I said, which PR number is this, and is it linked in the agenda?
It is.
It's
7597.
7597. Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe a question I had is if we thought it was worth tracking CPU utilization and peak usage, I think Stefano has that limited to Osquery in this PR, but I wonder if it's actually something we want to track for all processes.
No.
Oh my
actually,
God, yeah.
It is doing for all processes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I love
And you
that.
have a flag to say that only the Osquery worker to do that for only the Osquery worker to reduce the possible performance of the head. Yeah.
Okay.
That's
like-
amazing. Thank you for building that.
To be fair, our customer wanted to keep track of Osquery usage specifically, but since there was there were previous requests about, in general, adding that column to the processes table, I just made both of them basically. Yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome. And it's been reviewed from a C++ perspective already by someone, or no? I don't see any reviews yet.
No.
Okay,
All of them
so
are-
Yeah, bringing it to attention because it has been there for a while, and so code review could be great.
is this one of those ones that like Trail of Bits is kind of waiting on the community for this, but you could be doing it yourself, or is there?
So we won't object to that. Sounds like we might be the ones available to do it. So
I mean, like we can I'm sure we can allocate some resources from the fleet side to do it, but I'm continuing to advocate for not requiring folks from multiple organizations to approve.
I don't think we've even talked about needing that.
we talked about not hitting it. Is what we talked about. So shall we do that? We just need to find someone here.
So I think the only thing that gave me pause when I looked at this a while ago is whether we want the functionality, and I could generally be convinced either way. Zach's pretty excited, so that's basically a vote from
I
Mike
want
and a
it.
vote from Zach. So it's like, it's 2 votes. Pretty
I'm
good.
in. I'm sold already. This sounds like something that people will find super useful.
Stefano, what was the motivation? You can give us a little.
Yeah, so again, the original motivation was mainly to keep track of the Osquery CPU usage itself, so the worker. This is for having a better view of the interaction of the watchdog with Osquery to see if the watchdog is behaving correctly when in theory should kill Osquery because the CPU percentage is over a certain amount. Also, the customer only queries rarely, so there is a second information which is the peak usage information, which is kept. So you have a flag to say how long that information has to be, the window you have to use to calculate that information, because you use previous past samples to calculate that value.
I'll try and get this reviewed. Do we want to? Most of the things we were just talking about seemed like things we could probably get into a release in the next day or two. Do we think that about this one? I know I haven't read the code at all on this utilization one.
We can prioritize the review here. If our approval is enough, we can make sure it's approvable.
I continue to advocate for that your approval is enough. But if you need resources from the fleet side because you're not comfortable with that, then let me know and we will help.
No, I'll throw Stefano under a bus. I'm sorry, Stefano. Broadly speaking, I find the Trail of Bits code excellent, and I would trust your review of it. I like going over the PRs because I find I often want to argue about things like this flag feels a little bit funny. Maybe it should be named something else. You know, what's the zero value here do? So very rarely do I feel like I'm finding things that are like, oh, you missed a C++ thing, but I feel like I'm often commenting about sort of, I don't know, how does this fit with these other things? Does this meet my expectations for how it would work? So I do want to give it a go over, but I trust all your code. Like it's a different direction of review.
Well, the good thing about that is that it shouldn't take as much time to find your opinions on it as it would to scour it. For mistakes.
Yeah. I'll try and get that reviewed today then, so we can take a look at that.
Also, just noticed that I have to do order base. There's some conflict with CMake files, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the next one here was 7502. I think that just fell by the wayside in the conversation between Stefano and I suspect there's like 10 minutes to put it back in my head and approve it or something. I think that's probably a pretty small one.
And the infamous deprecation of Mac OS 10, 12, and 13. You've all looked at that now.
So this one just got weird. So the deprecation part seemed sad but fine to me, which is what I approved it saying. And then we added in a bunch of markdown changes, and I haven't read them. I'm just like,
Sorry.
what?
I just can't help myself. I know it should have been a discrete PR, but
I don't mind. I just haven't read them.
I was editing the files to change the numbers, and then I thought, oh well, the markdown ledger could be satiated with this change.
I'll take a look because that seems like it should be small change to do. So I think you can probably do.
I edited the top comment to explain the changes in the PR, and they're not too bad.
I'll take a look. I think it's pretty reasonable.
And then if there's no other CI goals from the list of milestone goals that you all think are urgent, I can just move them all to the 5.6 milestone, because a lot of them are like checking an artifact or improving the code signing repo. And I know those things are probably not getting done this week.
Yeah.
When are we targeting the release?
This week?
Pre-release this week, probably.
Nice.
I would have said on the 1st, because that's kind of what we're pretending, but we're finding a rhythm.
Yeah, we're doing good.
The other one that's maybe interesting, Lucas had a couple of PRs up. Are any of those ones mergeable? Those ones would be good to get in soon.
You're talking about Lucas from the fleet team, I assume?
I think so. GitHub. Could you search, please? He's got the deny list mechanism to distributed and discovery query bug as open PRs.
Those would both be great to merge. I can check in with him.
So I think the deny list one is probably pretty mergeable. It's either mergeable or real close. What was my last comment on that? I think I was suggesting we put some docs around it, which I guess if we wanted to, we could keep the docs. We could open a ticket and do docs as follow-up.
I think we could probably do the docs as well. Let me ping Lucas and ask whether he might have some capacity to wrap these up this week.
The other one I don't want to try and do this week. The discovery query bug, I feel like that got left in a real weird place, and I don't have confidence that we'll arrive at an outcome.
Okay.
I remember that our current behavior is weird, maybe not what we want, but maybe y'all are using it. So there's like a how do we thread that needle? And I think that PR was trying to thread it, but I don't remember quite how it did it. So I just don't think we can get that one turned around fast.
Okay.
But I think the deny list one seemed mergeable, say for documentation, and if pressed, we could do the docs as a follow-up. So I think we can definitely get that one merged in.
And that's the last of the things that we want to get in for this milestone.
Sure.
Good. Okay. What other agenda items do we have?
I got nothing.
The fleet folks? You want to share any upcoming feature plans or anything?
I'll tell you, we are hearing from folks who are interested in getting better visibility into containers, and we'll be looking into, Alessandro already saw me talk about this some, but especially now that we have Artemis here, something that we're keen to look into is how can we make the event space tables work more intuitively with containers, particularly by maybe giving the name of the container. Although I know that that sort of information is kind of spread across a lot of different places and depends on what kind of orchestration system and container runtime you're using. But that's something that we're going to be looking at.
My memory is that the PID namespacing stuff was like a beginning in this direction. So I don't know if there's work there to pick up or adjust or change.
I think that's slightly. I mean, that's another part for, if you want, for the support of containers, but it's not connected to events. So the PID namespace work we've done was more to make it possible for some of the tables, like files, etc., the polling ones, basically, to be able to query things inside a container. Yeah. And again, not event related.
Sure, I just, so I'm sure we're going to end up with different container mechanisms for different container orchestration systems. And I'm excited to see what Fleet comes up with. But I feel like I would be a little bit sad if we ended up with really different answers for evented tables and non-evented tables. So, keep in mind the prior work and see what the union looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I can already say that there isn't really much connection between the two, because the namespace things really uses the most low-level tools just to enter inside a namespace. So it's not even necessarily a container like a Docker container, just a namespace, which you can create independent of actually creating a container. So yeah, and a container is made of more parts, including namespaces. So yeah, also the objective of the BPF events, yeah, it's quite different. It's just connecting connecting the events to the respective container. Yeah.
Yeah, in the ideal implementation, we wouldn't have to have any workflows to detect a container. And I think I showed you a demo of my. So the code that we have now in Osquery is the most compatible one that we can write because it traces system calls. I have a demo for a newer mechanism that traces deeper into the kernel using the BTF debug symbols from the kernel. And that allows us to actually get the container name from the cgroup structures in the kernel. However, this code is quite in a bit of a mess right now, so it's not ready to be published yet. We do have the cgroup ID that we fetch from the kernel with a specific BPF helper. We have this ID, but I honestly don't know how to use it in user space, because it is quite different compared to the other cgroup things that we get. So if there was a way to investigate how that works, that could be used to implement an initial container attribution mechanism.
Alessandro, on the note, as far as I recall, the issue was that there is a file system, a cgroup file system. There are also two versions of that available in user space, but like you have to basically scan that file system to find the ID. So there, I think one of the concerns was a bit like race conditions, let's say, or yeah, again, the fact that there isn't a single operation to do. So already it is possible when you receive the event and this group ID to have a race condition, but if it was just a matter of accessing a file through a pre-constructed path with this group ID, then it would have been, I think, better. But I think we have to, like, you have to find the files that contain the cgroup ID to then and then connect other files together to finally match the container name. At least that was the last thing we were.
Most container runtimes will have you're gonna still have a process that everything is a child of. So it might be possible to just find that process and find all the children, but it's a pain.
Yeah, no, that was one of the things.
Okay, yeah.
Alessandro told about. Yeah.
I was thinking your alternative would be more like the trivial, just scanning through /proc and looking for where namespace is the thing you want, but ew.
Yeah, I was hoping we could get something of value from the Docker REST API. For now, ideally, we would want to get this from the kernel directly with BPF, but the system agnostic code we have right now is not able to inspect it. Or does it? Well, I guess I have something to implement it now. No, because that would only, sorry, that would require BTF again, which we don't have in those systems. I guess we could enhance the current table so that if the system is compatible, then we can get it from the kernel and have a fallback method for everything else.
So I think I lost the subject. What is it? The C group ID or?
Yeah, sorry, I was rambling a bit. Yeah, so we on recent kernels we could use our new features in the libraries to capture a specific thing into the kernel using BTF. But then if BTF is not available because we are running on another kernel, then we can find some fallback mechanism. And maybe we can see if the REST API of Docker can return something about the container that we can reuse to locate the cgroup ID name.
Yeah, the other annoying thing is that a cgroup ID, like a cgroup, can be reused in multiple containers because just if they're correct, it's just a template for a certain way to limit resources. So there isn't necessarily, again, as far as I recall, a one-to-one connection between a container and a cgroup.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a problem if the container is really short-lived. But I'm hoping that for everything else, it's going to work.
I mean, if you have multiple containers using the same cgroup logic, like I'm preparing a cgroup that limits the CPU usage by to the 10% of the whole CPU. That I think that cgroup can be used on multiple containers and have the same ID on all containers when you get it from the BPF events. So the risk is that you have this ID, but it doesn't match to a single and unique specific container.
So I'm not really an expert in cgroups. However, even if you share the cgroup settings like that, you're still going to have, for example, each container will have its own name. So you will at least have a private network namespace for each container, despite sharing a topmost cgroup to limit performances. And like, I don't know how it works, not really good at it, but I'm sure there's a way to get what we need. Because otherwise the containers will not be able to retain their single host names.
I've also, when working with systemd, noticed that often things are assigned C groups hierarchically. So you can say this slice is, you limit the resources for a slice, but it still runs each service in its own C group. Systemd uses this sort of stuff very heavily, even when you're not entirely isolating the service.
Yeah, actually, I've seen that in my POC. Even with no containers running, you will still get named C groups like user.slice. And yeah, I don't have a better method, but in here I was just looking at the prefix. So if it starts with docker dash, then it is a Docker container. Yeah. It's not great, but that's what I was using right now. Zach, I was wondering, is there a list of kernels you would like to support primarily? Because if we are talking about kernel versions that are primarily out of support concerning BTF, then there's not much we can do, save for using kernel headers. which we avoided so far to avoid kernel system dependencies?
I do not have, that's a good question, and I do not have a list of kernel versions we'd like to support. If it becomes easier to do this, if we require some minimum version, I think that's probably pretty reasonable, especially given that most of the folks who want this kind of visibility are using Kubernetes. And I think that typically when folks are using Kubernetes, they're probably in a place where it's easier for them to upgrade to newer kernel versions.
I see. There's also an alternative here to kernel headers, which are, it is easier to deploy, but it is still a system dependency. And so I don't know how we should handle this. It is from Aqua Security, the makers of Spacey, and it is a set of BTF data for kernels that do not support it. So this would ideally fix all the problems that we have, but yeah, it is a dependency that we have to ship or download.
And sorry, you're saying it has to be shipped separately from the Osquery binary?
So I'm not sure about the license. I'm mostly talking about having system dependencies that we would have to install, or creating network connections to download external data.
Got it. It's
So,
Apache 2 licensed, but I guess I'm assuming the way this works, it can't be linked as like a static library like we do with most dependencies. Is that what you mean?
it is a resource file, so it's a file we have to drop somewhere.
Oh, it's literally a file.
Yeah.
So I
And
mean,
it
it sounds very similar to the Aegeus lenses.
Yeah. So if it is doable, then if it's not a problem, then it is something we can use to backport this functionality to other kernels. But disclaimer, I have no idea how well this is working. I haven't tried this data.
Yeah.
Is this resource file kernel specific?
Yes.
So
As far as I know, it is. So we have this new debug symbol format, which is called BTF.
if it's kernel
kernels, and
specific,
they're exporting them.
if it's kernel specific, that also means that every distro is going to have its own flavor. Like, is there a distro answer to this?
So if we are on a newer kernel, like 5.2 and something, it is already in there. It is embedded. It doesn't have to be installed. It is in a sudo file under the /sys folder.
So the real question then is, for kernels older than 5.2, before it was embedded,
Yeah.
how do we get that data there? So I'm a little bit concerned that we cannot maintain that and ship that, because it's not just for stock kernels. It's going to be every Ubuntu flavor and every K Ubuntu flavor and every Gentoo. Like, there's too many flavors.
Yeah, that is true. That was my concern as well.
But what is the minimum kernel version that we need? You said 5.2 is the minimum that we need to not need this?
Yeah, I think so. Unless you are on CentOS 8, because they have a really weird kernel, and Red Hat has backported this to 4.18.
I feel like there's some space here where we can say if you're on 5.2, it'll just use it from the kernel. And if you're not on 5.2, you have to have specified the path to this file in your config file, and here's some instructions on maybe how to get it.
That seems totally fair to me. And if we, if that's the kind of thing that happens and people want to use this on older versions, it's something that we might be able to support more easily from through Orbit, which, by the way, which can be used as a drop-in replacement to Osquery. It doesn't have to be used with Fleet. So we could we could add the external file handling features into Orbit if that's necessary. But I suspect we'd probably find that the folks who want to do this on Kubernetes are using those new enough kernel versions.
It looks like if you're on Ubuntu 18.04, then you'd need the hardware enablement kernel. But if you're newer than that, if you're 20.04, it's just already there. So hopefully it wouldn't be that much of a problem. Because just telling people to use the hardware enablement kernel wouldn't really mess with their support.
And I'm sorry, I feel like I'm a little bit lost here. So if we had this, what does this give us?
Sorry. Sorry.
I think
Like-
it gives you better rope for BPF. Is that right,
Okay.
Alessandro?
Yeah. So traditionally, when you want to use BPF, you would use something like BPF trace or BCC that will use libclang to parse the kernel headers that you have installed. And then you can get the offsets to the data you actually need from the kernel. And we avoided that, not only so that we could have a more generic implementation in Osquery, but also because it was against the guidelines of having to install something on the system first. We actually tried that route, but we had some pushback. So BTF is an easier way to obtain the same information with no dependencies if we are on the ideal kernel, or with alternatives if we are on other ones like BTF Hub.
And if we had it, we would be able to identify the containers.
Yeah. So we still have to program this, though I have the helpers to parse BTF and to generate the BPF bytecode based on this information. We are still going to rely on the system call tracing for now until the rewrite is ready. And the benefits of the rewrite is that we will move away from tracing system calls, which is easier on CPU and memory, quite a lot better.
I mean, I like that. I think Seth said this, but I love the idea of, for newer platforms, it just works. For older platforms, you have to install this file from BTF Hub. We can help make that more of an automated process through Orbit if that's not something that we want to have to go into Osquery.
I mean, I don't even know if it'll be a real problem, so maybe we can wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, just doing part one, which is like assume it's there or use it if it's there, is going to be a big improvement.
Yeah, actually, there's another thing that I have no idea about. We need to access this file under /sys. And I noticed that there are some users of Osquery that do not run Osquery on the host. They run it inside a privileged container. And if that is the case, we still need access to this specific file. And I have no idea how to configure it and how to make it work, basically.
I mean, sounds like Fleet's going to think about this a bit, so I might just say I'm happy to see what they come up with, and it sounds like there are some rocks to turn over.
So this is the path that we need. Yeah, I haven't tried yet to. I'm really bad with containers and Kubernetes. I haven't tried to set up an environment locally, so I wouldn't know how to even try this out.
I was testing with the local, like the Docker desktop Kubernetes the other day, and I was able to like get a shell onto into the VM that Docker desktop runs. I can't remember now how I did that.
You can look up instructions as to get a shell into that VM on macOS. The macOS Docker setup is kind of weird because right on a Linux machine, you would normally run all the Docker things under the kernel's hypervisor. For Docker on macOS, so Docker desktop, Docker launches with Linux VM, and then all of your containers are actually run under that VM. So it's kind of like a weird thing. So there isn't really Docker running on macOS. Docker is running on a virtual machine that runs on macOS. So
Right.
it makes like maybe some of what you're poking at a little different. But yeah, you can get shell access to the root to the Docker hypervisor VM.
So, Alessandro, would it be helpful to you to learn, like, is that file there, or what are the contents of that file, or what would be helpful?
So we need to access that file from the running kernel directly on the host.
Right.
If there is a way to, because this is something that we're going to have to document, if there is a way to make this available to Osquery, even though it is running in a container, then we can make it work.
I mean, the thing that I would really most like to see is Osquery running one per node, one Osquery process per node. And then whether that's in a container or actually on the physical node, like either one would work for me. And then being able to get the, do monitoring across all of the containers that are running in that node.
Yeah. So I will start by, if you want, I can make a draft pull request that just implements this in the library, and then it is just a matter of updating the library within Osquery and deal with the API changes. It shouldn't be too much on the Osquery side, though.
I am getting access. I have syskernel BTF VM Linux from within a container on my machine. Though that container does have some weird hardware pass-through, so I would have to check some other containers to see if it would work.
Oh, that's really good news.
I would maybe.
I'm seeing.
I was going to say I would maybe propose
Jeff.
y'all work on this. It sounds great. But it's okay. Go on.
Yeah, and I'll just say as a counterpoint, on my Docker desktop Kubernetes node, I'm not seeing a syskernel BTF directory.
Okay, yeah. This is through LXC directly, or this is through LXD, and it has like a GPU. It has like a GPU pass through to the container thing, so it's likely a bit of a strange case.
It seems worth trying this on like a real Kubernetes node.
Yeah.
Cool.
Kubernetes is also going to depend probably on what OS the hosts are running, right? Because I would imagine an on-prem Kubernetes install is probably maybe running on an Ubuntu or CentOS. But if you're running inside Google's cloud, they're pushing people more and more to use one of their fairly minimal OSs, and Core OS maybe something else now. So it's just going to be super dependent, I think.
Yeah, totally. And for context here, it looks like Docker Desktop uses Linux Kit, which is maybe, I don't know if that's a common choice or not.
Yeah. I just a stock Docker installation on Linux. I have syskernel BTF. It's like through the Ubuntu image.
Okay, I can help out with a draft pull request if you want, and then we can try this out.
That sounds
That would
awesome.
be great.
Thank you.
Cool. It's about 2. I don't know if anyone else wants to talk about anything. If not, wonderful to see you all. And see you all in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Looking forward to getting this release out.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.